All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be an awesome podcast today. I'm joined by a gentleman that wears many hats. Right before we get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties transitioning from active duty back to normal civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. The easiest way to reach out to VetLife is to do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mitch Zajac. Did I say that right, Mitch?
Zajac, close enough.
Zajac, okay,
Yeah.
we're
It's
close.
been worse.
He actually knows some of the fighters in this building. He was a former wrestler on a team with some of our professionals, and he's, like I said, a gentleman that wears many hats. County commissioner, he's an attorney, he was a former college football player, wrestler. It's gonna be a story, a man with a lot of insight. So for the people that don't know you, let's just take it all the way back. Were you born and raised here in Michigan? Let's talk about your early childhood life and then how you became a man of so many different facets in life.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And first of all, set the bar a little bit high for me there, so I'll try and make sure the story's good. But yeah, so born and raised in Michigan, went to Holt High School. That's where I know the Shaw brothers from. I know them very well, wrestled with them all the way up through starting in 5th grade is when I started, but I know they were wrestling when they were 2 years old or whatever the case is, which is a lot of guys do, to become successful in wrestling and MMA and all those kinds of things. But yeah, Holt, Michigan, I played a lot of sports growing up. I think that's kind of where this jack of all trades approach to life kind of came in. Even when it was Delhi Parks and Rec soccer, all the little things you do as a young guy growing up, T-ball, all those things. So I was always super busy. But when I got into high school, it really started to focus onto the things that, I was planning for the future. From the beginning of the time, when it came to sports, I knew I wanted to play sports in college. Was it going to be wrestling? Was it going to be football? I wasn't sure until I really started to focus in high school on I probably was going to be a college football player, at least if the opportunity came. And so worked my butt off to make that happen, all the while wrestling and doing the track thing as well. But really my passion was always for football, and ended up and played football at Western Michigan. So born here, moved west, and now I'm back a little bit further east.
Wow, that's awesome, man. And do you think that came from your parents? Were they always pushing you to be the guy that, hey, try this sport, try that sport? Or were you just born with that innate, like, hey, I'm a competitor and get me out there?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. My parents are great. They're awesome. My dad is a very physically fit guy, played high school football, played high school sports, had an opportunity to play in college as well, but then decided to chase after my mom, actually. So, he was kind of probably pushing me in the direction, live the dream that I didn't get to do because I went after your mom. But my mom, very intellectual, super smart lady, works in healthcare insurance and knows, she's an encyclopedia when it comes to a lot of different things. So I think the combination of them kind of putting their different approaches on things, plus kind of this innate want to just succeed and do better and be the best at whatever the task at hand was. I mean, I would say that was the melting pot that I am, I suppose.
That makes sense, and that's a really good childhood. I mean, you had a good balance, and you had great role models to look up to. You have someone that's, intellectually crushing it, moving up the corporate ladder, doing extremely well in, a traditional sense of society, but then you have your dad vicariously trying to live through, hey, go out there and be that football star, you know what I mean? Because once you're someone with passion, that just doesn't go away. Even if you don't end up pursuing a career in athletics, you're always that person. When you experience, a lot of people refer to it as that fire inside. That's
sure.
Always there.
For sure.
And it probably carries over into your business. The same competitive drive that you had on the wrestling mat or on the football field probably carries over to you as an attorney wanting to be successful for your clients, wanting to, just be the best in every aspect of your life. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, no doubt. I think that if it wasn't the case, you're kind of faking it. You're either faking it, trying to be a football player that you're not, or a basketball player that you're not, or a wrestler that you're not, a fake tough guy, our college football coach used to say, a real fake tough guy we have here. But, if you're doing it there and you're doing it in your life outside of sports, whether it's professional, whether it's coaching, whether it's whatever it is, I think that's when the true spirit of the person, who they really are. And for me, absolutely. I probably, to my own detriment sometimes, apply that same approach. But I hope that the kids I coach benefit from it. I hope the work I do benefits from it. To me, it has to.
You just alluded to something I didn't even know. Do you coach currently?
Yeah, so not college, high school football at Howell, and then also track.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're giving back to the sport that did a lot for you in your life. Let's talk about the point where, you decided I'm not going to be an athlete. I'm going to become an attorney. And I mean, you're also a county commissioner. We have a lot to talk about on this podcast. But when did you feel that like pivotal point where you went, okay, I'm probably not going to end up in the NFL, or did something take place that made you go on that course? And were you going to college right off the bat to be an attorney? Like you knew that was kind of the end game, or did that happen later on?
So there's a lot to unpack there. So,
all right, we got a good story.
Yeah. So I actually went to Western with the idea I was going to be an engineer. I did this program growing up, and some of your viewers might know about it. It's called Destination Imagination, and it's a creative problem-solving program for kids. And you have the opportunity to basically get this problem, unpack it for 2-3 months, and then present your solution in a skit, in a whatever you want to do to somehow say, hey, I solved this problem, here it is. And so I'm very much a guy that works with his hands. I love to tinker in the garage, all those things. So I said, engineering. I mean, it makes perfect sense. So I went to school for engineering, got a master's degree in engineering, worked at Chrysler for 5 years before becoming an attorney. And so the pivot that happened there was basically I wanted to do more. I wanted to be able to apply this engineering background, this technical, creative, problem-solving background that I had in a bigger way. Not just designing parts. Which, hey, if you love it, do it. For me, I wanted to do something a little bit different, so went back to law school. But it's much the same about answering the question of why did you not go to the NFL. I don't know if I would have made it. I like to think, I look at some of the guys in the draft, I'm like, if that guy can do it, I for sure could have. But I reached the point where I was like, well, why am I doing this? What's my why? I have the intangible ability, the how to accomplish whatever this goal might be, but why am I doing it? Am I going to do it for a year? Because I probably could survive a year, and then what? Go back to school and finish and I'm behind? Or, I have this opportunity perhaps as an engineer. Can I put my love for something on the side for a minute, go back and coach and fulfill it that way, and then focus on the future? Because I'm a really big believer in the idea that whatever I'm doing today is not just for tomorrow. It's for 2 weeks from now. It's for a month from now. It's for 5 years from now. And I think approaching life and seeing decisions in that way, people will say you're boring, you're not living for today. But hey, I'm running a little bit of a marathon, So that was really the trigger for me.
Let's talk about a lot of people don't grow up as involved in sports as you did, but it absolutely shapes the psychology of people that are out there putting themselves on the line, competing, failing, having to get better, getting knocked down, getting back up. How do you think sports help shape your life, whether it was football or wrestling or in general? Like the man that sits here today is definitely a byproduct of lessons that were taken from the football field and off the wrestling mats. What do you think are the crucial things that you pulled from sports that makes you the type of guy? Because I can tell the listeners are going to go, Jesus, this guy's got a master's degree in engineering. He's college football player, master's degree in engineering, decides, you know what, I'm going to drop that right now. I want to go be an attorney now. And like, you're able to take confidence within yourself, find something that calls to you, and then pursue it relentlessly. And very few people have that, or it's a smaller percentage, right? Most people don't have the confidence to even get started in the first path that is calling to them. You know what I mean? Where do you think that comes from, and how do you think sports helped shape you as a man?
Without question, who you are, who I am today, came from sports in a very large way. Came from some of the coaches that I've had, obviously my parents, I talked about as well. But when you're on a team and you're working towards a goal that is bigger than you, and people talk about wrestling, well, it's an individual sport. Well, not really. I mean, the 6 minutes, yes, you're by yourself. Like you got to, survive or die out there. But the week of practice leading up to it, the coaching that you get, on breaks in the corner, all those things are all part of the sport of wrestling. And so I believe that everything you do is part of a team. And so I think the team aspect of sports for sure taught me a lot, both being on the team, figuring out how to lead a team, knowing when the team's not going in a good direction and figuring out how to shake things up perhaps. Without a shadow of a doubt, I am who I am today because of those experiences. And I think that it's on us, as you learn how to be on the team, then you have to transition to help lead the team. And so I'm of the perspective that I'm going to take all those things that I've done or I've had experience, going through and apply them to now how do I help lead the team? Whether it's defensive coordinator in football, working for the head coach, who's the real leader of the team. But I have my own little segment of it that I'm responsible for. So I'm following in one sense, but I'm also leading in another sense. And same thing in practicing law, right? You're the leader in one small project, but you're part of a bigger firm, or you work for a client, and they have goals that you have to figure out the plan on how to achieve those goals. All that problem solving and standing up through adversity, all those things came from sports, no question in my mind.
Are there any certain coaches or one specific coach that really stands out in your mind that really helped shape who you are? I find that most people that end up going into coaching later on had one person that made like a very strong impression on them. Is that true for you?
Yeah, no doubt. My high school football coach, Mike Smith, actually, he passed away in November. And really difficult set of months for me, because he was more than a coach, without question. He was, in recent years, a friend. I coached with him also when I graduated from college, so he was a colleague of sorts. Obviously, my high school football coach, mentor, father figure for me, and taught me a lot about life that was beyond sports. And I think he took that approach because it's the right way to go about coaching. Anybody can get excited about X's and O's, and for the high school kids, like, it's the most important thing. But I'm an adult and I've done this already, so why would I want to lose sleep over little things when I have a much bigger impact on these kids in a way that helps lead them? And that's what he taught to me, and building trust and building relationships and doing all those things that are important for, again, not just today or the win tomorrow, but 10 years from now. Can they look back and say, because of him, I did this, or if not for him, I wouldn't have, whatever.
So truly, he was setting you up for success just in life. In the current moment, you alluded earlier to the idea of, like, I'm not playing for right now. I'm playing for the long game. He was doing the same thing with you. He wasn't just building Mitch that was going to be successful in this next game. He was trying to shape a man that would take on adversity in this life and be successful. That's what I admire in good coaches, is people that inspire someone to be better than they either currently are or maybe even believe themselves to be. And then that makes change. And then it has ripple effects. And now here you are giving back to the community. And that came from, like, one man's good effort was a part of that story. You know what I mean? And now you're going to be a part of somebody else's story. Let's talk a little bit about law school. I've never gone to law school. Most people don't. What is that like? Because there's obviously a big stigma around it that was like, it's the most difficult experience. You got to pass the bar. What was it like for you? Did you find yourself, because of your self-confidence and who you are, you were able to just kind of crush it in stages? Or was it a really difficult process when you decided to go engineering to, I'm going to become an attorney?
It was interesting. I'll use that definition. I was working full time when I was going to law school. So I would get up, and in some parts of the year coaching, right? So I'd get up, real early, get to work, get the work done, have to go to coach, then go to class afterwards and rinse and repeat. Sometimes do it on the weekends. So I went to Cooley Law School, and I'm also on the board there now. So I've got this great passion for that school, for the opportunities like it gave me. I probably could have gone somewhere else too, but it has a really cool nights and weekends program that allows for people to who want to be go-getters, or who have to work perhaps to put themselves through it, or whatever the case might be, to take advantage of the opportunity. And for me, it was a convenience thing, right? Being able to try to fit all these things in one day. I needed a class from 6 to 9 because your normal 1 to 4 class just wasn't going to fit my schedule. But for sure, I found a way, I think, to really compartmentalize the tasks, approach the problem in a very narrow set of lenses, and then be able to attack the problem, just like you would.
Sounds like an engineer.
Yeah, right. And I would say I was able to be successful in a more high pressure situation, working, having that commitment, plus going to school, probably because of my kind of engineer methodical background approach. It was not a very traditional experience. I didn't have a lot of friends that were in law school that I would go study with, because I was basically driving to campus, taking the class, going home, sleeping, and, doing it again the next day. So trying to fit all of that into, one box, I found, I've been doing it for a long time, right? You don't play college sports and just slough off on your classes, because otherwise you don't get to play college sports. So you're learning how to compartmentalize in that sense as well, So I really took that experience and I think applied it in a successful way to going to law school.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you would have to be a master at multitasking at that point. And the compartmentalize is a really good word where like you had to, in that moment, you had to put on that hat and you were Mitch, the law student that had to crush this task. And then you had to go be a coach. Then you had to go make some income. And this goes back to your strategy of playing for the long game. Because like in that moment, there's a lot of people that might mentally break down being like, well, I'm not doing enough. I'm not seeing my friends. I'm not going out enough. I'm not having enough recreational time. You know what I mean? So sometimes people get too caught up in the moment and they're not looking at like, where are these, if I'm living every day in the moment, where are these moments taking me though? You know what I mean? Am I on the right road? Like, yeah, absolutely. You should live in the moment. You should pull the most joy out of the experiences you have. You should pull the most out of relationships around you. But you should look like, am I on a road that is going to lead me, 5 years down the road to being something that I'm proud of? Because a lot of people end up somewhere 5 years down the road that they're not proud of. You know what I mean? So,
right.
So I think that all of the parts of your story perfectly worked out for you to be able to handle that type of thing. How long does it take through like a Cooley Law School? How long did that take you to become an attorney?
So I was going for 4 years, but it could be anywhere. If somebody wants to go get it for 3 years. Actually, we have a 2-year program where you're just hammering law school 24/7 for 2 years, and then it goes on to 5 years as well.
How did you end up getting on the board there? That's wild.
I think it was continuing to just show the passion for the school. I had a great experience. I'd like to think I'm doing well to show what a Cooley student can do, but it's a want to be involved. You don't just have all these hats and do all these things unless you really want it, and probably a little crazy too. But I just stayed connected, was able to make some good relationships while I was there, stayed in those connected relationships afterwards, and an opening came up, and they were looking for someone younger. You look at attorneys like there's not a lot of young attorneys, that are doing things. A lot of them are, old white hair type guys. So there's a lot of opportunity for people who want to take advantage of it. And it, again, just translates to life. Like there's opportunity out there if you're willing to put your name in the ring. And sometimes there's a great quote. It goes something along the lines of, I think with Thomas Edison even, something along the lines of, if you don't know how to do it, volunteer anyways and figure it out after you get the job, basically. So I approach life that way. I'm the young guy, I get that a lot. It's cool. But like, I'm going to figure it out and give me a shot. Like I'm going to get it done. And if I don't, well, then you can fire me. But at the end of the day, it's kind of on me to live up to the expectation that I set for you. And I welcome the pressure.
It's wild that you say that. I'm going to tell a really quick story because the words you just used are an exact story of my life. When I worked at Champion Chevrolet, I was a porter making like minimum wage. I think it was like $7.40 an hour, like scooping gutters, driving cars, the lowest tier that you could be in at the dealership. And this spot opened up for a service advisor that they could make $50,000, $60,000 a year if they were good at their job. And I basically went to the owner and was like, hey, I'll work for free. You don't have to pay me. I'll come in here every day at 6 o'clock in the morning. I will go out there and do that job better than everyone you have out there. And I will prove my skill to you. And if by the end of a month, if I'm not the best service advisor you have, just fire me. You're not paying me anyway. And that attitude is actually what made him take a chance on me and was like, because my direct boss told me no. I went to apply for the position. He was like, no, you're like a child. Like You're a minimum wage employee. You're not going to be the first line of customer service at our dealership in the service side. It's not going to happen. And then I went to his boss and his boss was like, no, you're too young. You don't have enough world experience. No. Yep. So I literally went to the owner. The owner happened to be in there. He's like a multi-millionaire. He owns tons of dealerships, restaurants, like all kind of stuff. I just went right into his office and was like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. Give me a shot out there. Literally the exact way that you described that. Yep. I said, I'm going to set an expectation for you. And if I can't live up to it, don't hire me. You're not going to have to pay me anyway. But I will show you that I belong in that position. And then, I was given the opportunity. So sometimes you just need that little bit of grit, little bit of delusional thinking to your personality. You know what I mean? Because most people go, man, I'm a minimum wage employee. Like my boss told me no, the door's shut. We just don't think like that.
No way.
Like, I'm going to open that door. Now, maybe it's with you. You give me the opportunity, or maybe I'm going to build up and go somewhere else. But I will open that door.
Yep.
Let's talk about you're a county commissioner.
Oh, jeez.
Especially in this political climate and in this world. I mean, it is a strange new world that we are living in, man. People have firmly planted their feet on different sides of multiple arguments, and I feel like there's kind of a breakdown of communication, and we need elected officials now more than ever. but we need them to step up to the plate and be people that are willing to solve extremely difficult situations. What led you to wanting to get into the political climate? What does a county commissioner handle? Like what, for somebody on the outside, what does that role look like? And let's just talk about that decision.
Yeah, so I'll recap what a county commissioner is, and then I'll tell you why I was crazy enough to do it. County commissioner, think of like the parliament, right? Or think of like a legislative body, but has a little bit more authority than that. There's not truly an executive that's an independent, government official within the county. The way the structure works, at least in Livingston County, is there's the Board of Commissioners, and then they hire a county administrator who carries out the daily tasks of the government, and then the administrator has multiple direct reports. The department heads for personnel, say, and technically even the elected official of the sheriff departmentally reports up to the administrator, even though in that example he's an elected official and he kind of has his own statutory lane that he can go about without us, other than giving him money. He can kind of do what he needs to do. So the county commission effectively sets the budget and sets the policy for the county, and in so doing really controls the direction of the county, right? If there's no money, then stuff doesn't get done. If nobody has a policy, then it's kind of like the Wild West. There are no rules, and people are out here doing whatever. So the commission, sets those guideposts essentially, and then a good commission, in my view, allows the people that have been hired or elected in other roles to carry out those tasks. Why I did it, I ask myself that every day. No, it's been a great experience. I coach, right, and when I first got to Howell, I actually ran for school board and lost, right? So I was here for like 3 months. It's the same thing we were just talking about. Identify a problem. Nobody else wants to do it, or somebody's going to try to do it that I don't think can. So I'm going to raise my hand and just trust me. Well, nobody knew me enough to be able to trust me, and when you have to get a lot of votes, it didn't work out. But it was through that experience seeing like what the kids needed. Howell is a really interesting melting pot because you have very affluent kids. Livingston County's highest median income in the state, $90,000+ a year median income. But there's also people that are very not well-to-do. And we have to provide opportunity, service, et cetera, for all those different people. And so when you see that and you see the kids struggling and you see that they don't look at themselves as we were just talking about how we look at ourselves, and we say, well, it's really just a mindset thing. But they don't know that. They don't know what the opportunities are. They're stuck in their little bubble to no fault of their own. Maybe it's society, maybe it's parents, maybe it's whatever. But they don't know, and it's not fair to the kid. So that's a very small organism. You now expand that to the whole county. There's families, there's people, there's things going on that people don't know about. So I saw it as an opportunity to affect some change.
And I feel like a lot of the things that have led you to being the man that you are actually really important in an elected official. Like learning how to be someone that was personally responsible for yourself and as a part of a team. Then becoming a coach and learning how to guide others through the lessons, that you learned in your life. We almost need that in elected officials because you don't want someone that hasn't had to play all the different roles, because like you're willing to be the man under the spotlight. Most people can't even do that. Like if most kids in the younger generation, especially if they came into this building and I said, hey, you're going to speak in front of all these people today. I want you to teach the technique you learned yesterday. Their heads would explode. Anxiety riddles people. They don't want the spotlight on them, right? They want it elsewhere because it's easier. It's relaxing. You've been in the situation where you've had the spotlight on you. You've been in the situation where you had to be a member of a team, so your actions were bigger than yourself. You've been in the position where you were the coach that had to give back to others and selflessly devote your time to a greater cause. And now you're in a role where you can literally affect change in all of our lives. You know what I mean? We need that more in elected officials. Without saying anything negative, I mean, you know what? Just be openly honest. This is what this is about. Do you see that in a lot of elected officials? What is the average person that goes into politics? Because I feel like most normal people, maybe not like you and I or other people, avoid politics. They avoid those situations. They avoid legislation where you're going to have to debate back and forth over someone you might agree with, but there's all this red tape and paperwork. what do you find in the other people? Do you happen to work with a good group of elected officials? Do you think, in the younger generation, we need people that are leaders that are willing to have the spotlight on them? Like, just kind of openly speak on that topic.
Yeah, I mean, that's another, that's a whole podcast in and of itself. First of all, my colleagues on the commission are great. I think we are very effective as a group of people where we don't, we're all Republicans. I mean, it is what it is. But we're all on different parts of the spectrum of the Republican Party. Some are very ultra conservative, I'll say, and it's as far right as you can get. There are others that are very close to the middle, but they have conservative approaches to solving their problems. I think that in order to do the job well, you have to acknowledge that there's going to be blowback. You're going to make decisions that people are not going to agree with. You're going to have to advocate for your position. You're going to have to, whip the votes, so to speak. Make a phone call to say, "Hey, Susie," and there's nobody named Susie, by the way, on the commission. But, "Hey, Susie, I know this is your thing, and I know generally how you feel about this, but let me tell you why it's so good, this thing that I'm proposing," or whatever the case might be. So you have to, not only in a large group, when you have the Zoom cameras and, people can come in and say basically whatever they want to you, but you also have this one-on-one ability to really steer the ship in a conversation-by-conversation basis. And I think that I do have some colleagues that don't want to upset the apple cart, which is their approach. They were elected. The people of their district find that to be an admirable thing. It's not the way that I handle things. I'm more of all right, let me flip this table if I have to, and I think both fit well and are needed in any sort of team environment, just like you need the offensive lineman as well as the star quarterback. Without both of them, the team's not going to win. And I think the same is true if we had a bunch of rebels. It's not gonna go far. If you have a bunch of pacifists, we're not going to get anything done. So the dynamic that we have, I think, is very good. I think.
And being an attorney is probably perfect for this. I mean, because you're someone that has to openly go in and debate a case. You have to present your side. You have to be persuasive. You have to have information that backs your theories. You have to be articulate. You know what I mean? So really, it's not even just your sports side and who you are and your confidence. Almost every piece of the puzzle happens to fit to make you, in my opinion, a great commissioner.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. But for sure, the idea, there's a saying, I'm a big sayings and quotes guy, but if you wrestle with a pig long enough in mud, you'll learn pretty soon that they like it. And that's just like arguing with an attorney. So you argue long enough with an attorney, you figure out that they like it. So it becomes a little bit of a sport at times. But as long as it's goal oriented, I think that all of the commissioners that I work with, they are goal oriented. They have the best interest of the county at heart. Perhaps their perception of what that interest is may differ, and their willingness to step out and do more or do less may differ. But we're all really rowing in the same direction, I think, and I think that that's what's needed to recognize that you're part of the team, but then also to be able to flip the table if you have to.
This is an embarrassing fact about me, but I'm going to tell it on the podcast. I've never voted in a single election in 33 years because I am not, I'll be honest with you, I'm not. Anything I do in my life, I want to be educated on. And I want to be educated on by either my own resources that I believe in or people that I admire, trust, look up to, and I can take their information as valuable. I never want to be a person sitting on the outside thinking that my opinions in the world of politics are correct, thereby being like, oh, I'm going to support this. I'm the type of guy that probably like you, I have to break something down to the smallest possible detail and understand it for me to take a strong stance on it. Otherwise, I'm like, I could be wrong, and I don't want to put my feet firmly in the ground. What made you know that, I'm a Republican? What pulls you to that direction? What would you tell someone that's on the outside of politics are the biggest differences between a Democrat and a Republican and why you feel yourself on that side of the fence?
That's a great question. So I'm very much fiscally conservative. I believe in a small government. I believe in the right to life. I believe in all of those things that you really see on the poster of what's a Republican? What does it mean? Those are all things that I believe in. And so I think whenever you're trying to find your identity, you're looking to say, well, what's out there and where are the pieces that I align with? And to me, that's where I align. I would also say that I don't agree with all things that the Republican Party says, right? I think that anytime you want to be a leader in anything, you can't just be a sheep and follow the way. Sometimes you have to challenge the leader. Sometimes you have to say, are you sure? Just ask a question. Are you sure this is right? Or even if you think it's right, it's not something that I align with, and therefore I'm going to take this position. So I'm certain, there hasn't been in 4 months, but I'm certain there will be a time when there's 9 or 8 people that vote one way, and I'm the only one that votes the other way. Perhaps out of principle, perhaps out of I don't agree with the reasoning, whatever the case might be. Now to answer the question of the difference, I would say that a less conservative approach to things is bigger government, is more spending instead of giving the people their money to let them decide the trajectory of their own self and the society around them. Tax and spend, and I'm not a favor of either. There's a time for spending, stimulus and those kinds of things, but to be creative and not say, well, we're going to tax everybody in order to get this money. I think that there's a lot of those kind of philosophical approaches. The one thing that I don't think it really gets a bad rap is the social issues. There's people that say, well, what separates a Democrat from a Republican is the social issues. I think Republicans are just bad at talking about social issues. Like, they don't know how. If they knew how, they'd do better. But as of now, we need to do better about talking about these issues that are social in nature and not just focused on the finance.
100%. And I have friends on both sides. I have, very close to me, friends of mine that are Democrats and friends of mine that are Republicans, and they're both wonderful people. And it's funny that you say that at the end, because I do feel like at least in my personal experience, the Democratic friends that I have are a little bit more emotionally intelligent, and they're very limbic system driven. Like, the way they feel controls their actions very strongly. So if they see someone in suffering, they're very emotional about. Whereas like my Republican friends are more like numbers and like just the data, the logic, the personal responsibility, especially if you're someone that's super successful, like you're successful, I'm successful. I look at it like I'm not special. You can be successful too, and it is unfortunately your responsibility to do that. That doesn't mean that I think that that everybody's born on the same tier. That's not true. There's people born at different standards, but I think too often it gets kind of blurred. Like, it gets blurred to like, if your skin color is this, you naturally had all these disadvantages. What if your skin color is X, but you're from an affluent family, you're put into a private school, you have a lot of money, you have great mentors, you have good childhood, versus, your skin color Y that didn't have any of those things. I feel like a lot of times the issues get presented incorrectly, right? There are definitely dynamics to our society that we all need to work on, but I feel like we are doing better. Anyone that doesn't acknowledge that, if you look through history, we are for sure getting better as we move forward. And my Republican friends are more, they're not as good communicating with just like their emotions, but they're extremely loving people. They're people I know that like openly welcome everyone around them. So what I'm trying to get with this ramble is that, like, man, people on both sides of the fence are awesome. I have awesome friends on the left. I have awesome friends on the right. And I know shitheads on the left and shitheads on the right. Yeah. And that's why I really enjoyed your answer of like, listen, like, I believe any human being on earth that blindly accepts allegiance to if my party says this, then that's the answer. You're shutting off your thinking. You're not critically thinking at that point. And we need to now, more than ever as a society, come back to like, Republican and Democrat is a title. You are a human being with the capacity for thinking that needs to look at our situations as a whole and say, how do we solve this? Not, I hate you because you're different than me. You know what I mean? Right. That's the same ludicrous thought that racism is, or all of it, or classism, or countless things, right? Is you're different than me, so that makes you wrong. We need more elected officials that are willing to say like, hey, I might not have all the answers, but I'm willing to get into the fight. I'm willing to have the dialogue, and I'm willing to try to move this needle in a better direction. Let's talk about your goals, man, because you're an attorney, you're on boards, you're an elected official, you're 31 years old. right? 31-year-old?
Yeah, 31.
You're about to be married coming up, right? Congratulations on that.
Appreciate
When's the wedding date?
I can't disclose that yet, but we're getting close to locking it in for sometime in the May next year.
All right. So let's just say that the man is he's engaged. So you're crushing it across many different aspects of life. You talked about you play for the long game. What's the long game for you? You're on top of the world, man.
Yeah, I set myself up for failure on that because I was actually having a conversation with one of my athletes the other day and was talking about the idea that, there's not a playbook for what we do, right? Whatever it is. Even if you're just going down I'm going to be an engineer and work for 30 years and get a pension and go home. There's really not a playbook because you have all these other things that you have to figure out and how it all fits together. And I think that because there's no playbook, there's no right answer or long-term answer. Because what I think today is very much likely to change. Shoot, it could change tomorrow. It could change. I'm driving home and I'm reflecting on this podcast and say, "What am I doing? I'm quitting it all. I'm going to just coach football and track and do whatever." I think my long game is the process. Still, I don't think that I know yet. I think that. Winning is hard. I say this all the time to our kids. Winning is hard. And it's not just winning in this game, though, I've bled, sweat, and cried over the game of football. And if anybody ever wants to challenge something in football, I'm ready to go. We don't have to, talk about it. But at the end of the day, it's football, and it's high school football. And these kids are 18, and they go on with their life. And we're kind of stuck here, continuing to coach the same, demographic of kids. So what do? We implement a process about what it means to be a good human, what it means to become a leader, what it means to work hard, all these things. So for me, I got to kind of practice what I preach and continue to be a part of the process. I'm not here to say, I want to be the governor if the opportunity presents itself, which there's a big opportunity right now. Then we could get somebody in there, but and do a little bit better job. Sure, we'll figure it out. But right now, I would say I'm continuing to put tools in the tool belt, and to be able to say, I was a lawyer for 5 years, and now I'm ready to lead this part of this organization because I know how to talk to people and fight for whatever my cause is. Or, hey, if the Detroit Lions call and they need a new linebacker coach, let's go. Whatever it is, I'm trying to just continue to build because I do believe winning is hard. I do believe what we're doing today is not necessarily just for what this short-term activity is, but it's for something much further down the road.
Man, just if I clip that segment of the podcast alone, that right there was insight gold dropped. I mean, it really is. You're attached to purpose. You are not attached to I am Mitch the lawyer, and if that failed, my life is a failure. You're attached to purpose. You're turning this life into what I become in the process is more important than the dream. That was a famous Les Brown quote. He said, "What you become in the process is more important than the dream." Because the type of person that you become by taking on these challenges and putting yourself on the line and growing and failing and winning. And like you said, winning's not easy, man, especially being a winner consistently.
Yep.
Not just in football, not just as an attorney, but in life, in relationships, in all aspects of life. Being something that you classify within your soul or whatever you say, a winner. You know what I mean? I'm inspired by sitting here and talking with you because we need more of this energy, man. We need more of this energy. And that's the type of people that I would gladly back in an elected office because we need people that have purpose, that have passion, that aren't going to be persuaded by some money in a bank account to all of a sudden drop their morality. You know what I mean? Right. And corruption exists in the world and it'll always exist. But the more people we have that say, you know what, I have purpose. I have something bigger than this. I'm going to leave a legacy behind. I can tell you're a man that cares about legacy.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's important, man. So this has been a stellar podcast, absolutely stellar. I'm going to ask you if you would like to go into this topic or not, and if not, we can just shift direction. But COVID has changed the world, right?
Sure.
The way that we interact with each other, politics has turned into a mess over COVID. I'm sure you guys got pressure from higher up levels. I mean, when you have a governor and a legislative body, that's not, like I said, Democrats and Republicans are all human beings. Okay, we're all human beings. But if they're saying, shut your businesses down, close these doors, your restaurants have to operate at these capacity, don't you let James Gray open his gym up the road. And now here you are, an elected official that's supposed to be caring for our people and steering our county in a good direction. You're basically caught in the crossfire. if you are willing to talk a little about what that was like being a man, because I mean, it's been difficult for people that are just sitting at home. To be a man that is literally, on a board that we need to stand up for the average person, that had to be difficult. But you're also the person that doesn't fear the spotlight. So if you're willing to talk about what this has been like from an elected official perspective, it's something that I would like to hear about personally.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm happy to anytime, all day, every day. I think it goes in a lot of different directions. One thing that sticks out to me is local government, local control. I mean, that's a conservative principle that I believe in, whether I was running for school board or if I ever run for president, not to put this idea out there that I'm running for president, but
it's in the universe now.
Right.
The law of attraction has begun, my friends.
So, but the notion of, I believe that people in local circumstances know better for the locality than the people that are in a bigger circumstance. And so when it comes to what the rules should be in Livingston County, I wholeheartedly believe that, of course, we should take input and we should, try and get as much knowledge and become as smart as we can on the issues. But ultimately, it's our decision to make, in my view. Now, there's certain things that we can't control, and that's, controlling the narrative or the communication between us as the intermediary, essentially, between the residents of the county that are hearing all of the media that is obviously most directly coming from Lansing and the executive and also the legislature, but then saying, well, what can we actually do? What can we do to help? The big thing is there's not a lot we can do. We can only do so much. So one example that I always talk about is we recently waived the restaurant fees for businesses, which it's $1,000, it's $800, it's $1,500, whatever the case might be, but it's a little bit, right? It's they were shut down for a while. They didn't have income. They were trying their best they could with curbside service, which I ate a lot of curbside service, and my belt line is not thanking me for it. But we were doing our part, right? We were fighting for the small business. So we did our part as a commission. We said, well, we're going to waive these fees. It was a great idea, actually brought by our health director. She's been a very innovative thinker through all of this and really has done a nice job partnering when it made sense with Lansing, but also recognizing we have to stand on our own 2 feet. There's no other way to say it other than to be very sad. Not to get emotional or anything like this, but to be very sad for the state of affairs, to say that people have been, have had so much fear, blasted on them, that they are now reacting to the fear in a way that is oftentimes not very productive. And in another sense, talk about young people, you have these different rules for when you're quarantined and, you can't play your sport because Susie, who, she just is a math student, doesn't have anything else outside of that, which is fine. But she's not working hard after school, and she gets sick, and now because you're in the same class, you've got this quarantine issue. So figuring out how to balance all of those things, I think, is really important. I've only been on the job for 4 months and 10 days, beginning of this year, but what I've seen firsthand is a willingness to have outside-the-box thinking, to not just give in to what the rules are and to challenge the rules, to ask those questions, just like we talked about earlier, to say, well, is this really right, or do I really have to do this? And then making the best decision that you can with the information that you have.
So we have some controversial topics that I don't think history will reflect well on people, like masks on children. You're talking about a virus that is a non-existent threat to children. Like nowhere even close to a flu or H1N1 or countless other things. Not even 99.999% or more. It is not a risk to children. But we have our children who already are going to lack social skills. You're talking the generation that's 16, 17, 18 now is riddled with anxiety. We have an anxiety epidemic, right? And a lot of the times that comes down to self-confidence, and it comes down from you haven't learned the skills to interact with the world in a confident way and to interact with people and challenge and know you are up for and able to solve the challenge, right? So now you have children that live on screens, that live in a virtual world, that are afraid to make phone calls. You're going to mask these children, tell them to be afraid of each other, maintain 6 feet apart. If Susie in class had COVID, even though you have no symptoms, you're barred. You shut down your goals. We saw kids that weren't able to go to states, Olympic hopefuls shut down. At what point do some people like not just put your foot down and say, this has zero logic, makes no sense. There's not a person out here that could argue this in a way that they would win. You're an attorney. Like, the case is stacked against them tremendously. You can't go in with emotion and say, well, I just feel like it should be this way. That's not how it works in court, right? It's what you can prove.
That's right.
So no matter how upset I am and say, oh, yeah, well, I don't like what you said, Mitch.
Yeah.
That doesn't win my case, right? We still have children mastic schools. We still have people living in fear. How do we change these things? What does the average person do, or who do we look for? Who is the person in this county that, like, the buck stops at, that if they said, you know what, we are not masking the children in our schools. If anything, children help provide herd immunity for fragile people because their immune systems are extremely active. They're filthy. They touch their hands on everything. They then eat. That's how we grew up. We grew up in a world where you knew that. You knew you were supposed to interact with the world. I'm supposed to shake your hands. I'm supposed to do these things because it's like a muscle. When you work it, it improves, right?
Right.
Who does this fall to? Where does this decision come from? Are people just waiting to make a call, or have people decided that this is the correct choice? And if so, like, on what basis? I'm a person that needs to run on logic, and I don't see it, and I'm kind of waiting for some superhero in a cape to be like, I have the power to say that this dumb shit ends today. But it's still going. Who makes these decisions, and why aren't people taking a stand? Like, because you said earlier something, hey, I might be the one person and the 8 other people might be in disagreement of me. Who's the one person that can make a difference at this point? And is this even being discussed?
This is it's a great topic of discussion, and it goes back to the informing piece. There's not a lot of things that the commission themselves can do specifically when it comes to schools. Like, we are actually in process, and I hope it comes out either today, tomorrow, or the next day, with changing some of the quarantine requirements. So instead of it being like, you walked by Susie and you're on quarantine, which is what was basically trickled down from the state finally relinquished some of that responsibility and authority to the counties. So we are relying on our chief medical officer, who is a doctor, to come up with proposed guidance on what might be more reasonable, at least as it relates to this quarantine thing. So the hope is that it's going to at least cut down to 3 feet, and then we can spread everybody out. There's enough room. There's all these capacity things that can be dealt with. With the masks, the problem is, again, not that the county can control anything, but just a big picture approach. Schools get their money from the state. The state sets the rules for the schools, how they get their money. I believe that there are roadblocks for the schools to be able to make those decisions to say, be damn what happens, we're not going to wear masks. Well, the problem is there's money tied to that, and the ability to actually be a school is tied to that. I don't know that to be the answer. I'm an outsider looking in just like most other people. But I do know that our schools are trying their best for the best interest of the kid within the rules that they're allowed to play.
But it sounds like they're slaves to money. It sounds like they're completely, yeah, we're trying our best. We're just not doing what's in your best interest because we could lose funding. Think about how silly that sounds. Imagine telling that if there was one society in the world that made rational decisions, thought logically, and did what was best for people. And then you had another society that was going, well, if there wasn't a bunch of money on the line, we would definitely put our kids first. But, do you really think they're going to pull funding from a school where in Livingston County where you have children? Or do you think there wouldn't be an open outrage? You wouldn't have the masses? The bottom of the pyramid is much larger than the top. They just don't know that, right? You don't think that in overwhelming numbers, people would say you pulled funding from our school because we stood on the side of reason?
I would like to think that they would not. I would hope that they would not, but the problem is we've seen time and again where there has been a rising up of people, and it's yet to change the trajectory from Lansing. I know our legislatures in Livingston County are working hard to get actually more funding for schools to be able to, hey, if the rules are this, if you say this is what we have to do, how can we take the masks away? What do we have to do in order to do that within your rules that you're setting, that you unfortunately have a lot of power to do. One of the things we can do is continue to elect good legislatures. Here in Livingston County, we don't have that problem, in my view. I think our three...
But it sounds like it's so beyond you. It sounds like we could have the best legislature here, and someone can dangle the prize or the thing above your head. You're basically telling me on the podcast. It's kind of depressing me sitting here thinking that like it's just out of these people's hands. No matter how bad they might want to do these things, it sounds like the message behind your words is it just comes from a much higher level. Why can't we challenge that authority? Why can people? I thought that's what we're meant to do as people, is challenge things that are incorrect.
No doubt. And I think that when you look at the three legislatures from Livingston County, they are, but the problem is there's a large body of legislatures that needs to be convinced on any issue, right? I think we were very successful. Actually, I believe it was led by Senator Tice in the Let Them Play initiative. She was very vocal in that, and I believe because of her involvement, we took good steps in a very short period of time, governmentally speaking, to undo some of those restrictions. And those are the types of things I think that continue to need to happen to lobby not just the 190,000 people in Livingston County lobbying our three good legislatures, but continuing to have opportunities like podcasting to reach other people. The Unlock Michigan initiative was huge because it connected a lot of different parts of the state. A lot of different leaders were identified through that process, and Saldano's even running for governor. And so those things are what will change it. The problem, and it's not a comforting feeling, is it's not an overnight issue to solve, right? We talked about winning is hard, and what I'm doing today is really not for tomorrow, but it's for months or years from now. We can't expect immediate change absent some sort of total destruction of everything that we are.
I'm delusional, but think about this. On May 1st of last year, I said, I'm calling your bluff. I am opening my building. We will wrestle. We will do jujitsu. We will not wear masks. We will exercise because it's good for you. We'll breathe fresh air because it's good for you. We will interact with our environment because it's good for you.
Right.
And that is extreme change. That was me saying, I'm not going to work within lines that don't make sense. I'm going to open the building, and if the state police show up and shut me down, I will champion this cause from now until this fight ends. It's the only thing I'll do. All of my obsession and passion for MMA will shift towards countering this domestic terrorism that I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
I just don't see why. Maybe I'm being extremist, but I just don't see why a couple councils, if you're all on the same board, and like you said, local government understands better the needs of that small environment than big government. Plus, there might not be as many factors pulling them different directions.
Sure.
That they could just say, no, in this, we will take a stand. We are the front line of defense of big government trying to destroy. You almost got emotional. Think about how many small businesses were destroyed, people's life's work absolutely massacred.
Right.
We need a front line of people that say, nah, man, if you want to come after anyone, come after us. But we will not allow our people to be butchered by rules that you have trouble even backing yourself. Every day the story has to change because if you look into it, you're going to go, oh, this isn't really based on that much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, maybe I'm delusional about the fact, but I called the bluff, and that's why things changed. Mm-hmm. If I would have just said, well, tell me what state I can open in and what capacity and distance. And can you social distance in wrestling? If you find anyone that can teach a takedown from 6 feet away, I'll hire them today.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can't. So I literally had to say, bullshit, I will go back to, you can't tell me exercise is bad for people. You can't tell me, people struggle with mental health. Mm-hmm. How many suicides took place during this period?
Sure.
We had an opioid epidemic before this. We had drug abuse. We had all these things. We had people turning to alcohol. These are things that plague society, that destroy people. Mm-hmm. So I openly took that, things will change overnight. On April 30th or whatever it was, I said, tomorrow it will be different.
Yeah.
And then it was. So maybe I'm being too extreme, but I just don't see why the people at the top couldn't say, until you can show us an actual argument that is based on some type of reasoning that would have held up 5 years ago. If you went back to 2015, you tried to explain why we have masks on children right now, someone would lock you up in a loony bin, mm-hmm. right? I just can't. I don't know. I'm an extremist.
No, it's not extremism. It is you being a free person. It is you exercising your ability to live in a capitalist society where you are responsible for yourself. And I applaud the effort that you've done. I've watched it live not live, but I've been here a couple times. I will say to see some of our guys rolling around, and I do believe that everything you said is very true. And if there are people like you that wish to exercise the same thing, I would be just as supportive of them. The problem we get into is what shield do I actually give you, right? If I were to say, we're going to do, Livingston County, is this, and this is what the rules of Livingston County are. How do I protect you from the Michigan State Police showing up here? I can't. But, you have made this conscious decision. If they show up, I'm ready for a fight, and not literally. So all the people that try and gaslight.
Not going to be violence toward police.
There's
we
no
have tons of police that train
That's
here.
right.
I'm super supportive of the police.
That's right. It's police
but I
week.
am ready for a physical fight.
That's right.
No.
It is police week, so we're very supportive of our police, no doubt. We have great police in Livingston County, and state police. But my point is, when you are being shut down, when you're being fined, when you're having to go to court, how do I look at myself in the mirror and say, I made this declaration that doesn't mean anything, and then James and his people put their necks on the line thinking it meant something, and now they're pissed at me, they're pissed at everybody, and they lost their business, or they lost their license, or whatever the case is. What we are doing, though, we are taking steps. I want that to be clear. We are, tonight, actually, 5:30, we will be, today is May 10th, 5:30, we will be voting on a resolution that FOIAs, the Michigan MIOSHA, that says, give us all the info that you used to base your decision about the return to work, the masking up at work, all those things. Give us all the data. We have a right to know why you made these decisions. We, as Livingston County, are an employer, and so we want to know why we are doing this for our employees. It serves a bigger purpose, in my view, as well. It's not political. It is, we are representatives as the government of the people, and so we need to be able to answer the hard questions like those that you're throwing out with, what are you doing? We're going to do everything we can. And I don't mean that to say, like, they say we can't, and so we're not going to. That's not the case. They say we can't, we're going to still try. And we're going to do things that are more than just declaratory in nature, and I applaud also the counties up north. They've taken some really aggressive stances to say, since the time of King George, there's never been so much tyranny. Though I agree, I don't feel that you've done anything for your people. I want to do something for all of us, right? I want to put us in a position where we can have information and then take action on that information. As soon as it's available, we will. So, not extremism, that's the short answer. Applaud the work, that's the second answer. And we as a county are going to, as much of a shield and sword as we can have and use, we are and we will.
That is wonderful to hear. I mean, and I understand when you were just describing that, like, hey, even if we were to say that, like, here in Livingston County, we believe in freedom and we believe in your immune system and your right to live the way that you choose. Like, I mean, I could say, and information and statistics can be super misleading, man. Mm-hmm. Super misleading. Like, imagine if I said, I want a report of how many car accidents took place in Michigan today, and if it's above a certain number, nobody can drive. Like, you have to, risk is in life, okay? And statistics can be misleading very easily. Like, when I started figuring out that they took hospitalizations and deaths as the only thing to formulate, like, mortality rate of a virus, I was like, what?
Right.
That's madness. So you have to look at the information very objectively, without emotion, and say, like, where is this coming from? Who is giving me this information? Am I missing variables? Can I put it into proper perspective? And then what do I do with it? But I understand what you said, that, like, it truly is out of your hands. If you guys declared that in Livingston County you can operate your business normally and people can choose to support your business or not based on their belief system, that's brilliant. I mean, I thought that's what we were supposed to do. But there's no reason then the higher government couldn't come after those people. But in a weird way, and not that I'm asking for this, but, like, I'll be a symbol. I tell you what, if you come after me, I will gladly be a symbol that, like, you can still stand up for yourself. You can stand up for your community. You can stand up for people. You can have a voice. You don't have to be a doctor. I don't have to be a mathematician to tell you that 1 + 2 is 3. Like, I don't need... Be confident, know your information, be willing to have a debate, and stand up for what you believe in. But It's a very difficult problem. I could see it in your eyes when you were trying to break that down. You're stuck in a very hard spot between the people and an extremely powerful government, that is already, our legislature was going after our governor, and our governor was not providing information to our legislature. And I don't know Governor Whitmer. I've never met her. Some people are like, she is the devil incarnate. I'm like, I've never met her. She could be as the worst human being I've ever met. She could be a good human being that, in my opinion, has bad policy, or perhaps the people giving her information are presenting information in a certain light. Maybe there's money tied to certain, I don't know. All I'm saying is man, I don't know her. All I know is the life that I've witnessed over the last year for a lot of people has been very poor. You know what I mean? And in the name of safety, I think we're going a little bit too far to, the wrong side. I'm hearing stay safe everywhere, but we openly provide shit food, alcohol, do this, that's fine, stay safe. Don't go and exercise with James, but the bar is fine. You can, oh yeah, hell yeah, we're open till midnight, no problem. Hook up with a random person, do whatever fine. Don't go exercise.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're on the same page, and we don't need to laugh about it.
Yeah.
If you wanted to look for logic at this time, there's not a ton in everything that's going on, but I digress. This podcast has been awesome, dude. It's been truly a pleasure getting to know you. Over just an hour period, I'm supporting you.
I appreciate that.
I need to know that the elected officials that I'm believing in is a human being that went through trials and tribulations and forged himself or herself into someone that they are proud of, that cares about their actions, their legacy, their story, that won't just, well, I don't want to rock the boat. I know this is wrong. And I know that if this was my family or my friends, I would stand up for them, but I'm just not gonna. I don't need that. I want someone that's willing to have the spotlight on them and say, hey, you know what? I'm an attorney too. I'm willing to have a debate. I'm willing to break down this information with you. We need more of that. So I tell you what, man, when you're running for offices, please let me know. I've got a powerful network here. I really hope to, back you and push that. Because we need it now more than ever. And I doubt most of the next generation coming up are going to be flocking to politics. I don't know if you're going to get
They'd be crazy.
I don't know if you're going to get the cream of the crop going. You know what I want to do when I grow up? I want to get into the political world. But honestly, we need them now more than ever. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, the government is growing. It is probably spending more than it ever has. I believe that the money moved during COVID was the largest sum of money in the history of the world of politics. So there's going to be ramifications for all these things. And, hopefully we have leaders of the next generation that are willing to, step forward for people, willing to fight for us. And, I would not want to be in your shoes, but I'll 100% support you in your pursuit, man.
Well, I'm going to probably need some training lessons out here just to get ready to go for all that. But no, I appreciate it. And I think, I'm not in it for, to run for governor someday. I think that somehow separates people who are good in government. Look, if you don't want me to have this job next time, I got a lot going on, so, I can fill the void. I do think that, there are people that need to have good perspective, that need to have exposure and experience to people of not just a single walk of life, not just an old person, not just a business owner, not just a blue-collar worker, not just a school teacher, whatever the case is. And, I pride myself in trying to do that, and not for me, but for little Susie, that's the track star, or little Johnny, that's the star football player, and helping them become somebody in the future. And like I said, if you want to take my other job away, the commissioner job, and I can do that all the time, it's great. But I think it accomplishes both goals, being able to have an insight and then apply it. And yeah, like I said, I'll flip a table if we need to, but we'll try to have the normal discourse before it ever escalates that far.
And like I said, to wrap it up on this topic, man, I have friends that are Democrats that are wonderful human beings, and I have friends on the other side that are Republicans that are wonderful human beings. And I think, a massive problem we have is demonizing the other side. That's why, I know people in general that truly hate Whitmer with a burning passion, the same way that people hated Trump. And I react the same way to those people as I do to the people that hated Trump. It's you don't know the person. And the amount that he's actually probably affected your life is the most minimal thing ever. You should be more bothered by the person that cut you off in traffic than Donald Trump or Governor Whitmer, but yet you're basing your life and your hatred around that. We need to stop demonizing people on the other side. We need to know we're all in the same fight. We need to work together as people. We need to drop political lines and say, how do we problem solve? And I just hope that our legislation is doing that. I hope that, hate's an ugly thing, and hate divides people. Hate tears societies apart, families apart, people apart. So, even if you're a fan of mine or this podcast or, Mitch's or our team, please look inward too and make sure that you're not filled with hate and you just want to see the other team fail, the other people struggle, the, ha-ha libtards or ha-ha conservative. Drop all that shit. We need to get back to like, how do we solve complex society problems together as people to make a better world? Because that really is the end goal. The same way you coach one child or one team, because I'm a coach too. That's what I've dedicated my life to. You're trying to build a better future for that person. And then really all you want in return is like them to take that energy and then go do the same thing. And it has a ripple effect. You know what I mean? The greatest currency I get in here is people that accomplish a dream. They're like, man, thank you so much, James. Like, I appreciate all the years. I appreciate the work. Like, there's a magic feeling to that. Money can't replace that. Experience can't replace that. Like, there's a magic to helping other human beings enjoy this life. You know what I mean? And in a weird way, all coaches know this. You enjoy their success even more than your own. It's weird, man. You know what I mean? Once you start coaching, if you fall in love with that, seeing somebody else like level up to a degree that they didn't know is a magical experience. So, Mitch, it has been an absolutely stellar experience having you on the podcast today. I think down the road we'll have to do a part 2 as we go further into the political climate as you're, continuing to progress. I can't wait to hear your story in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, because you're the guy that's just enjoying the journey but becoming what you're meant to be. So if governor's in your cards, I bet you it just falls in your lap. I bet you that's how it works, man. You were someone that you built the resume and all of a sudden you go, maybe I am fit for this position. Maybe I could be the gentleman that people would get behind and support. You know what I mean? And for me, it's real life, everyday people that are willing to face fear, struggle, difficulty, and and help other people. So truly an honor to have you on today.
Appreciate it.
And we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah, I'll say, just so you know, it started on the James Gray podcast. That's
all right. There we go. The Gray Area podcast was the launch. It was the first time ever we said, you know what, one day, see this, you're going to clip this one day and say, he was alluding to the future. It was the law of attraction.
There you go.
So, all right, brother. Thanks. You so much for being here.
Glad to be here.